Hey, this is Rob, and you're listening to the Hidden Destination podcast. So, yeah, second day in the saddle after sort of the little bit of a rest weekend in Minneapolis. Yesterday I rode, almost about 63 miles. I'm going to be naming this the Northern Tier Loop. That's going to be sort of the chunk of this Minnesota ride that I'll be doing, terminating back in Minneapolis when I meet up with Claire. But this little section of the journey will be referred to as the Northern Tier Loop. So yeah, I rode from Wild River State Park to Milaca. Not sure how to pronounce the name of this town. But it was a bit easier ride, 62 miles with about 1,400 feet of climbing. And was able to do that in somehow under 5 hours. That was in part due to a pretty generous tailwind and a series of, unlike the day prior, not a series of super steep climbs. So that was it was definitely a bit easier on the legs. But overall, it was a really, really nice scenic ride. It reminded me a lot of Illinois and Indiana without the corn tunnels. So it was pretty open, rolling hills, farmland, a lot of soybean crops, it seemed, a lot of lakes. Definitely getting into lakes territory. It's amazing when you ride through an area with a bunch of lakes, how just the smell of the air completely changes. So that's been pretty cool. But yeah, overall good ride. Pretty sparse in terms of areas to refill. I had to refill water at the Dusty Eagle bar in one of the only towns that I was passing through a pretty big stretch. I ran out of water, and the bartender was super nice. I was like, do you mind if I grab some water? And she was like, oh my, it was actually funny because she had the thickest Minnesota accent I've ever heard. So definitely starting to get into Minnesota accent territory, which is pretty cool. But yeah, ended up making it into town at a pretty decent hour. I did have one stretch coming into town. There was a road closure. And then that pushed a bunch of traffic onto one of the secondary streets that had no shoulder, and it was like a 55. And I rode it for a little bit, and it was way too sketchy. So I made the decision to cut up some dirt roads, and it was going to be a longer ride into town, but I ended up taking a roll of the dice and going north on some dirt roads up to Highway 23. I wasn't sure what Highway 23 was, but my assumption was that it was going to be, because the route had you ending on Highway 23 for a little section. So I thought I'd just head up there sooner than later on the next available northbound street, which was a pretty shitty dirt road, and cut down 23 back into town. And so I'm going up this dirt road, and I see more road closure signs and a bunch of construction equipment on Highway 23. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll probably get turned around or have to keep heading north. So I get up to the highway, and it's definitely closed. They're doing some pretty heavy construction on it, but it's only chewed up at the intersections. The rest of the highway was pretty well paved still. And so I asked one of the construction workers, I was like, hey, I need to get into town. 140th Street is far too dangerous for me to ride. Do you mind if I just sort of get on my way and cut down this highway? And he was like, oh yeah, no, totally. You're totally fine. Just watch out for the construction equipment, and yeah, you should be good to go. So I had this whole highway to myself, which was amazing. And so I'm cruising along, listening to music, feeling good, almost in town. And then I come across another intersection with road closure, and there's a ton of construction equipment, and I thought I was going to get sort of told to either not cross through or turn back around. But all the construction dudes just sort of stared at me as I passed on through, and yeah, no, it was a good end of the ride. So the roll of the dice, the gamble paid off for sure. And then yeah, made it into town. Pretty sizable town. There's a fair amount of amenities here. There's a decent grocery store, some bars, restaurants. The campsite that I was in is part of the city, and there's like three little plots adjacent from the city skate park, and there's like an amphitheater and like a water park, and it's pretty cool. So camped there overnight. I've definitely gotten way more comfortable. Like camping in a spot like this at the beginning of the ride would have definitely sketched me out. I feel comfortable camping at, designated camp spots like the one last night at a state park, but something in town, I definitely wouldn't have felt comfortable with. But now it's just normal, it feels. And these city-run campsites are really inexpensive. So this was $10, and the one I'll be possibly staying at tonight, depending on what the weather looks like, is $15. And all things considered, they've got pretty good services. There's running water. There's no restroom here. There's a porta potty, but that's fine. And there's a place to charge my phone, lights, and charge my rechargeable battery. So definitely can't complain. Keeps the expenses a bit lower, and yeah, yay for city parks with camping. It's definitely not a thing back east. Definitely seems to be a Midwestern thing. So yay for that. And yeah, I guess the last sort of piece of this, one of the reasons I wanted to get into camp earlier last night was because I did have that phone call with Skydio to sort of debrief on the interview, and As I sort of expected, there was, they said the interview process went well, the presentation went well, all things went very well. And then she was like, "Do you remember your interview with Tristan?" This was Connie, the hiring manager. And I was like, "Shit, yes, I do." That was the piece of the interview I didn't feel super comfortable with. It was the technical interview, and it was focusing on networking, and I don't have a lot of networking experience at all. So there's a huge networking component to this job, and any networking experience that I had was sort of really early on at my time with Newtonomy, and it definitely didn't go super well, that portion of the interview. I think one of the things that they were looking for was to have candidates, if they really don't know the technical solution to the problem, to ask more questions and to sort of just say, I'm not sure, versus me trying to like brute force my way through. But it also revealed, like, sort of relevant to this trip, it has revealed that, as I've spent this past month or so just out here in the world, and like mostly the most like profound piece of this journey has been connecting with people. My sort of technical mind, from being in an engineering role to now doing this, has atrophied a bit, which is interesting, because I've noticed sort of my mode of thinking has shifted, in terms of being less sort of hyper rational and obsessive and sort of mechanical, and it's been a lot more fluid, and as Ian McGilchrist would say, like sort of the in-betweenness. I've been occupying more of the in-betweenness instead of the polarities, and that's in warm showers and sort of all of the social interactions throughout the journey has, I would say, like almost softened my mind in a sense. And so like thinking now in a technical engineering sense is a bit more difficult. And to be honest, I don't miss that way of thinking. There's just less anxiety. That one of the things that has really stood out about this trip is like it's revealed like the beauty of humanity, and I do feel like one of the compromises that you make when you're in more of a technical engineering role is that I don't know, I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive, that if you're an engineer and you're working on technical problems, then you can't occupy more of a holistic, sort of empathetic, people-focused state of mind. But I would say there are a bit of trade-offs there. So either way, I definitely, I've definitely noticed how this trip has reshaped a lot of my thinking, and I definitely feel more comfortable occupying, and definitely feel happier occupying this state of mind, which is just, I mean, obviously I'm not working and I'm traveling, riding my bike, but still, I think not occupying my mind on a daily basis with a super technical discipline has been really refreshing. And yeah, so that's that. I'll be setting out here pretty soon. Got a bit of a bigger day today. We'll see how that goes. And but it looks like after Bullis, I'll be riding from here to Bullis on the Northern Tier, and then taking one of the ancillary routes of the Northern Tier down to Albany, and then Albany to I forgot the name of the town I'll be possibly stopping in tonight. But looks like a bit of rail trail from Bullis, from what I can gather. So that's exciting. But all right. Well, until next time. Ta-ta.